For more on this, we're having three guests coming from the United States. First of all, joining us from Washington, D.C., Cliff Zhonggang Li, who is the Executive Director of New Asian Leaders. That's a Washington-based Asian American leadership organization. Meanwhile, joining us also from Washington, D.C., Larry Shinagawa, who is the EVP of New Asian Leaders, who is also a retired professor of the Asian American Studies program at the University of Maryland. And joining us from New York, we're having Mr. Nicholas Fortuna. He's a trial attorney. Gentlemen, welcome to our program. This is a very important topic where we're discussing, particularly in the hearts of Asian and Chinese Americans right now. First of all, is this, from your perspective, quote unquote, selective prosecution? Let's go to Mr. Li first.
Yes, we, from the statistics, we can clearly see the selected prosecution, especially under the circumstance that recently there were a lot of racial tension, like in the Ferguson case. Also, the quite a lot of protesting on the police brutality. And so there's also a tension between the LAPD and the municipal office with the mayor. So at this kind of circumstance, it's very reasonable to look at the statistics that over 100 police officer shooting in last 15, 16 years. Officer Peter Liang is the second being prosecuted and convicted. So it's very it's clear to us. It is a scapegoating. Yes.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Fortuna. You're a trial attorney. Do you agree with the verdict coming from the trial? And secondly, from your perspective, selective prosecution?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I don't agree with the verdict at all, and what led to the verdict is very troubling. You know, I agree with the issue that, or the concern that it was more politics in the atmosphere of tension between the police and different communities and cultural differences between the police and the communities led to this prosecution. This particular district attorney ran for office recently and got elected based upon criticisms of police conduct. So, you know, they set up a special unit for prosecution of police. And to the point of Mr. Li, since 2005, the tens of thousands of police shootings that did occur in the U.S., only 54 people were actually indicted or prosecuted, 54 police officers. As far as whether or not Peter Liang committed a crime, I don't think the evidence supports that he committed a crime. I think a lot of it had to do with his, you know, what happened after the shooting, the atmosphere, and I believe the prosecutor, you know, improperly argued at the end.
Well, Mr. Fortuna, since you're a trial lawyer, so I have to go into the details with you. We have to take a look at the facts. First of all, Peter Liang, at least according to the verdict, was that's the official account. He was actively patrolling in the area, not in response of any specific crisis when he was shooting the African-American young man. That's one thing. The other thing is, when he found out that the African-American young man was shot, he did not immediately went to help to apply medical care. Thirdly, he offered his conviction. I want to make sure, even though we are doing this discussion on China's TV, we are not siding with any side if we don't have enough evidence to do so. So let's go to Mr. Fortuna once again as a trial attorney.
Sure, and I wasn't presuming that you were on one side or the other, but if you look at the evidence and what's required of a manslaughter conviction, you have to have knowledge that what you're doing has the risk of causing the particular harm that happened. Now, Officer Liang was in one of the most dangerous housing projects in the city. He was doing what's called a vertical patrol, meaning he was going up and down the staircase to the roof, the most dangerous patrol there is among the patrols that the police officers have to do. There was no lights in the hallway, so there's no way he would have seen the victim in this particular case. Now, I think he was negligent in the way he performing the patrol. His gun did accidentally go off, it appears. He wasn't shooting at anyone. All the evidence points to the fact that he wasn't aware that someone was shot. Now, his behavior after the shooting has nothing to do with the crime of manslaughter. Now, you can criticize his behavior for not providing help, but the crime itself occurred prior to that. So the fact that he responded badly or that he reacted, the defense says he was in shock. Whether or not he was in shock or he just didn't have the intelligence to quickly run and provide aid has nothing to do with whether or not he committed a crime.
All right.
He was a floor above. There was no lights.
I see.
Now, you also...
I see. We have already...
You also... Yeah.
You've already offered quite a few points. Let's go to Professor Shinagawa for now. Do you think this is an issue of justice vis-a-vis politics? Whose justice is it, and whose politics is it?
We're talking about a situation across the country in which many African Americans and Asian Americans and many other communities are very incensed with police violence. Many deaths have occurred. The FBI has been trying to investigate how many police deaths have occurred over the year, deaths by police officers. And unfortunately, most of the districts do not comply by providing statistics about it. One of those districts is the New York Police Department. We're seeing a situation where that information that is so crucial for monitoring police activity is not available. In the case of Peter Liang, there is so much that is so unjust. And one of the things that comes out very, very clearly is that there is an element of racial bias. If you look at the last, ever since 1999, there's been 179 police shooting deaths. And of that, only 3 were indicted, and then only 1 was convicted prior to Peter Liang. In each of those other cases, it was much more interesting to find out that there were more direct relevance to the possibility of death for that victim. In this case, this was clearly accidental. And the question mark is, why was he singled out? Why was he possibly a scapegoat for the system that is very, very, not corrupt, but let's just say inept, at the very least?
Well, what do you think?
I would...
Go ahead.
I would say a couple things. The circumstances leading up to this incident and the trial were very unfortunate for Officer Liang, Peter Liang. Now, the community, New York City, was outraged at the Ferguson incident that there was no indictment on this by the Staten Island District Attorney's Office. The U.S. Justice Department started investigating it. There's been many, many protests about police activities in New York City itself. Black Lives Matter have been protesting. The district attorney in Brooklyn came into office under part of his campaign was taming the police violence, going after the police. So all of these factors are playing into a circumstance where we have a police shooting. This police shooting should not have been prosecuted.
Okay.
But it was at the wrong time in the wrong place.
All right. Interesting. But Mr. Lee, can we say the prosecution of Police Officer Liang this time, would that serve as a precedent? Are we going to see as a result of this, if this is how things are likely to happen, more cases against the police who have been conducting violent actions toward the public, the innocent public, might be punished? If that were the case, should Mr. Liang be prosecuted now?
Well, makes no mistake that Mr. Liang had his fault. That's inadequate police training and all. However, we we feel that just to prosecute a Asian American officer because because that's have a very little repercussion by the from the eyes of a powerful, because it happened to be a representative of a minority group which was perceived to have a weaker political status. So yes, we agree. The police officers, police, all over the nation should look into their records. Should solve the problem at its roots by better training, by a better enhanced relationship between police officer and the people.
All right.
However, this is just the wrong way to go at the problem.
Professor Shinagawa, though, it seemed that Mr. Lee's presumption in his answer earlier is having in his mind that the Asian Americans and Chinese Americans are the socially weaker party inside the American society. Is that a correct assumption to begin with, first of all? And secondly, only because others were not prosecuted, then all of the many others to follow should not be prosecuted, including whether it's Chinese American, it's white American, or African American.
Okay, let me go into that for a second. First off, I would like to make the greatest and the dearest condolences to the Gurley family. What has happened has been a major tragedy for their family and for the entire community. It's very, very clear that an injustice has happened in which he died needlessly. Secondly, what I'd like to say is that there is a pattern in which Asian Americans have been seen sometimes as a silent, passive minority, the population that won't make a fuss. There's been some publications in the past that have said that Asian Americans are the quiet minority. That can't be so. In history, Asian Americans have been quite active and have protested on many occasions. When we think about Vincent Chin, for example, he was beaten with a bat by two out-of-work auto workers. And what ended up happening is that the entire Asian community went to the defense of the family, the Chin family, to try to make sure that there was justice. Although the person that perpetrated it, Mr. Evans, was never put into prison, the entire Asian community rallied. It shows that Asian Americans are not going to take it. And this is another example. For the very first time, we are seeing nationwide in over 40 cities, Asian Americans, especially Chinese Americans, who had taken to the streets, taken it to the communities, that they are not going to take a situation where there's going to be unequal justice.
All right.
Like you asked me on the third point, there is an issue. The thing is, people need to be treated fairly and equally. That means that everybody should be.
Okay.
No police officer should be above the law. Everybody should be treated exactly the same.
We heard
that
you.
has not happened in the
I
past.
agree
and it
that
hasn't.
everybody
we heard
has
you.
to.
And Mr. Fortuna, I do have a very specific question for you since you're a trial lawyer.
Sure.
We are talking about, the three of you, talking about a systematic problem existing with the police now inside the United States when it comes to racial issues. But the question is, when you have a systematic problem, if an individual with the systematic problem did conduct a crime, should this individual be responsible for what he did? Can you just blame a system
Absolutely.
without prosecute the individual in the system who exactly conducted this crime? That's an interesting question. I really need your answer here. Sir, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I mean, no matter what the cultural conflicts are, and even if someone commits a crime, and even if they're the oppressed part of the population, they should be held accountable for that crime. And just putting aside, I don't think what Peter Liang has done amounts to a crime. It is tragic for the victim's family, and it is terrible. But the other point is, we have a jury system here in the United States. Now, the jury is just people of the community. They're affected by their perception of what's going on in the streets, what's going on in their community. And as a trial lawyer, sometimes you're battling those preconceived ideas to get across what should be fairly done. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes there are circumstances where you have a jury pool where they're too inclined to believe either the police or not believe the police. And you can end up with those circumstances, and those prejudices that they do have will affect their verdict. And it's a trial lawyer's job, and it's a tough job to go in there and fight those perceptions and get them to do the right thing.
Great point.
And my belief, I do strongly believe in the jury system. I think that a good trial lawyer can do that most of the time, and I think it's better than having judges decide the outcome of cases, because I think the circumstances, you get more justice from a jury.
Interesting point. Before we go, I do want to have 30 seconds or so from every one of you, since you are talking about a broken system, and since there has been a lot of uproar about the ill of this broken system, since it's already become the biggest political topic inside your country in the United States, how it can be fixed, and will it be fixed, for example, within the, let's just say, Obama administration, or are we seeing a very, very long term to go? Let's start with Mr. Lee first, 30 seconds for every one of you.
Well, I wish I have 30 minutes to talk about it.
Well, you only have 30
but,
seconds,
let me
sir.
just yes, I got it. And look, I just want to clarify that we are not asked for special treatment for Asian Americans. We just want to have the equal justice, being not to be singled out as a scapegoat, just simply because we're Asian Americans. Actually, there was a bigger problem. The reason many Chinese Americans are coming out to protest, because the experience of this time, the tragic experience of Officer Peter Liang, reflect a lot of our life experience living in this great country. And so that's although there was no systematic discrimination anymore after 50 years of civil rights movement, or still there was a bias, prejudice in our daily life. So that's the reason we come out. Yes.
Okay, so you're talking about your reason come out without providing a proposal for solutions. Let's go to Professor Shinagawa.
Yes. Yes, this is a very momentous time. Asian Americans, for the first time across the entire country, have rallied to this extent. And they believe very, very strongly that justice should be fair and equal for everyone. And that includes African Americans and Asian Americans. I really suggest that every effort should be made so that police reform occurs, that there is proper training that does happen, and that there is monitoring of police practices. That kind of activity should be one in which Asian Americans and African Americans are working together to find solutions, along with other members of the community. This is a wonderful time and a wonderful opportunity to make a bad situation good and to make this country better.
Call for attention on this specific case studies so that people can work together for a solution. Let's go to you, Mr. Fortuna, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, one of the things I disagree with is that the system is broken. Look, it's a system created by humans. Humans are fallible. Nothing is perfect. And that's why we have appeals, we have reviews of what actions were taken within the justice system. And one of the great things about New York City in particular is it is multicultural. And there are cultural conflicts, but everyone is welcome. Everyone respects immigrants in New York City. Despite all the rhetoric you hear in different campaigns and election campaigns, New York City's important. So I do think it's good that the Asian community is coming out to defend their position and right for justice, but all the other communities do that as well, and I think that's a great thing about the city, that their voice will be heard.
Nicholas Fortuna, Larry Shinagawa, Cliff Zhonggang Li. Really appreciate the gentleman for being with us. I tried to argue the other way around because it seems all of you are on the one side. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.